government says it is committed to those values, but it says that your presence, you threaten those values. You're not conducive to the public good because of some of your rhetoric.
Yeah, of course the government is going to say that. They're not going to be like, yeah, we hate free speech now.
What's in the air? You know what's in the air. You know what's in the air. You know what's in the air. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so the real headline here is that it looks like Abdul El Sayed won the primary, the Democratic primary for Senate in Michigan. As of now, New York Times has called it. Some of the other outlets are saying, that it's still too early to call, but I don't think so. It looks like he's won. Haley Stevens has not conceded yet, but I imagine she probably will in the morning. So this was a tough race. It was a close race. The polls leading up to this were saying that Abdul was up by like 15 points, 12 points. That was not the type of outcome that we saw, but maybe a reflection of the excitement leading up to Election Day, which is the reason that Abdul had the momentum to kind of just push it over the edge. So not the type of victory that we would have wanted to see here. I think that it was looking like it could be a blowout, and that would be very satisfying, and it was not a blowout. So we'll get to that later. I want to talk about the details of that. There were some other races in Michigan that went well, but Hasan Piker was, on the ground and has been on the ground in Michigan helping with that race and other races, and has done a couple media hits because of that, but got kind of randomly ambushed by Channel 4, which is a UK outlet that wanted to ask him questions about his being banned from the UK and some of his, political activities in America. They hit him with some hard questions here. I'm not sure exactly what the angle was, but him being seen in the context of organizing for these candidates that are pretty solid and ended up winning is a good look. So maybe didn't get the negative soundbite they were looking for on this, but here is Channel 4 talking to Hasan Piker.
Can we just ask you about the Home Office revoking your visa? We're from Channel 4 News in England.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs that the Labour government did such an undemocratic thing. But I guess that's the state of the world now. That's the state of liberal democracy now. I didn't have a problem going into the country under Tory leadership, which, clearly I'm at bigger odds with.
They've said that your presence in the UK wouldn't be conducive to the public good. Do you think that could harm Abdul El Sayed's campaign being associated with you?
No, I don't think so.
Will it put off some voters?
No, I don't think so. The overwhelming majority of the Western world, I think, recognizes that what Israel is doing is a genocide. I think the media is now playing catch-up at this point, but for the most part, the people are pretty united on this issue. And no matter how hard governments move in the direction of repression, you can't really hide from the truth, and you can't really hide from the shame either. So, it's a setback, it's a hurdle, it's a real shame as well, especially considering that, I personally thought the UK was a bastion of liberal democracy, that these values like freedom of expression were values that especially the Labour government would be committed to. Hopefully there will be some attitude shifts happening with Burnham.
The government says it is committed to those values, but it says that your presence, you threaten those values. You're not conducive to the public good because of some of your rhetoric.
Yeah, of course the government is going to say that. They're not going to be like, yeah, we hate free speech now, but were they really committed to it with the pensioners that they arrested for the Palestine action protests that were taking place? I don't think so. I think that was a significant mode of repression from a government that recognizes that they are out of step with the needs of their voters, with the needs of the masses that recognize that Israel is committing a genocide, and the masses that demand a change from their government. That is the fundamental of liberal democracy, something that I believe in, something that I'm fighting for here in the United States of America, as the Trump administration is putting democracy in the crosshairs. And it is a real shame to see that exact same mechanism of repression get repeated in a country like the United Kingdom.
And what about some British Jews who say they feel uncomfortable that some of the criticism of Israel does tip over into anti-Semitism? Some British Jews say that makes them feel very unsafe.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. It's something that I oppose. Anti-Semitism is something that I've fought back against. It is the canary in the coal mine of fascism. It's completely unacceptable. I'm an anti-fascist. I'm uncompromising on those values. I will always fight back against anti-Semitism as well. The fear can sometimes be very valid, And sometimes I think the fear steps into the territory of defending the nation state of Israel and its actions. I think people are people, countries are countries. I criticize Saudi Arabia vehemently.
You're not suggesting the fear isn't real for people who feel the fear?
Of course not. And I do think that there is a legitimate reason for it as well. I think it's not a secret that anti-Semitism has historically exploded in times of Israel's sieges in Gaza, and this time being the most consequential one, the most violent one, has also led to an increase in anti-Semitism. We believe that is partially born out of this false association between Judaism and Zionism, a false association between the nation state of Israel and Jews living in the Western world, Jews all around the world. We oppose that, and we will continue fighting back against that, no matter what people say.
Are some in the Democratic Party, in the establishment, out of touch with how many younger voters especially are feeling about issues like Israel and what's going on in Gaza?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a secret. I think this race, as well as many other races that I've played somewhat of a role in, I had the honor to work alongside some of these wonderful candidates. This insurgent movement that's growing in this country has proven time and time again that it's not just about Israel, but a litany of different issues as well. It's about corporatism. For some, it's about capitalism. But for many, it's about corruption and a lack of interest from our politicians to address some of these economic pains that people are experiencing. I mean, after all, this is exactly what Donald Trump ran on as well. He said he was going to fix the prices, and yet prices remain quite high. There's a real affordability crisis in this country. He said he was going to run on a peace ticket, that he was going to be the peace president, and yet he has started countless wars and only continues to leave the world in a state of disarray. A lot of people are very frustrated by that. It's not just the Democrats either. There are a lot of independents who are frustrated by this too, and there are a lot of Republicans who are frustrated by this too. And I think it's fine for DC to be bubbled in and to be completely out of step with the needs of the masses, at least for the time being, because this is a real opportunity for campaigns such as this one, such as Abdul's, such as Malak Kiros, Chris Rabb, many people who are here right now, Donovan McKinney, who's running tomorrow as well in the primary, to really shine, to show that there is an alternative perspective out there, one that centers the needs of the working class rather than corporate interests, because for far too long that's been the only game in town. But we're coming.
So I think Hasan's doing great work right now. His work in these elections has been paying off a lot. It has not been the type of liability that the media has tried to make it out to be. We'll see how that looks going forward into the general elections. In the primary season, Hasan Piker has been helpful to these candidates, and it's possible the dynamic around that could change or not. We'll see. It'll be an interesting test to see how well the streamer kind of off the cuff saying whatever type of energy, is that a liability to Democrats in a general election, or is it an asset? I think it frankly could go either way. It certainly tends to be an asset on the right, but then, with a character like Nick Fuentes, who people have tried to compare Hasan Piker to, Nick Fuentes does end up being a little bit more toxic for candidates on the right than it seems like Hasan is becoming. So they're going to do everything they can to make that not the case. They want to try to make Hasan as toxic as a figure as they can, and I think he's doing a good job in these moments of keeping his composure, staying really on message. I mean, he's really hammering the message pretty clearly in pretty much every context. And the fact that he's going outside, he's going to these places and helping organize and showing himself doing that, I think it goes a long way. And like I said, the fact that they're bringing the cameras out and that's the visual that they put out of him is possibly the reason that they were trying to step on this footage or weren't sure if they wanted to put it out, because he's very on message. I will say that he is quite a political animal at this point. And so, what he does best is just political rhetoric. He's very good at explaining that. I think maybe some of his communication skills outside of that could improve, especially as he's, going into these different spaces. But I think, in the general election, he's probably going to recede from the spotlight a little bit, at least in terms of helping these candidates. Maybe with canvassing, that will continue. Like I said, it'll just be interesting to see, because they're going to try to use it as a liability. And I'm sure El Sayed feels some loyalty to Hasan Piker, but at the same time, if they need to distance themselves from him in order to win, then they might do that. They're going to get hit with the the questions of like, do you support what he said about 9/11? Do you support this? Do you support that? So I think that Hasan's rhetoric tends to be on point enough and not inflammatory enough that it's really, really hard for them to make some of these extreme accusations stick to him. But, you know, he does his trolling or whatever. So we'll see. I think overall we just need to take the lid off of the rhetoric and allow it to fuel the movement. But you're going to see a lot of fighting back and forth in the party about that, you know, and now that this primary season is over, I don't imagine the centrists are going to go down so easily. And the hatred for Hasan Piker, which has translated to a decent amount of hatred for El Sayed, you know, it runs pretty deep. So we're going to continue to see those tensions. But I think it's pretty clear that the progressives, the people like Hasan Piker, the people like El Sayed are pretty much on the leading edge of the party right now. And the only way that the Republican side specifically is going to be able to slow that momentum down is to exploit that division, which is apparently what Trump is saying he's going to do, or the people around Trump are talking about doing. And that's naturally what you see happen throughout the course of elections, is that existing resentments or political feelings get sort of exacerbated and deepened, and that is how you can drive wedges in certain voter bases, depress turnout where it might be needed. You know, this was very close for El Sayed, which means he's really going to need a lot of the voters that turned out for Haley Stevens. And so here is a message of him trying to be a little bit conciliatory towards supporters of Stevens, or doing what a candidate has to do now in a moment like this, which is try to unite the base for the general election, as well as taking aim with a couple shots at Mike Rogers. So here's El Sayed with that.
There is so much more that unites us. However much we might disagree with our Democratic opponent, there is so much more that unites us than divides us. And so to all of our supporters here tonight, watching on TV, tomorrow we begin to mend fences. Whatever happens tonight, we have a responsibility to assure that we unite to make sure that Mike Rogers never sees the inside of the U.S. Senate. So look, forgive me, Mike. I just know that you spend so much time with pharma lobbyists, I just thought you were one. You've taken so much money for them to raise our prescription drug prices. I just thought that you just got in the business. After all, you haven't really explained how you made $14 million golfing in Florida. Unless it was trading on all the government relationships you built when you were in Congress. So I don't know, maybe 14 million wasn't enough. You got to come back, get some more relationships and trade on them too? This is a guy who has never seen a check from a corporation he did not want to corrupt himself with. And here's the thing about it. He can't decide which era of Republican he wants to be from. On the one hand, he was from the neocon era that had us fighting unnecessary wars in Iraq, swore up and down he could never support Donald Trump, then went to Mar-a-Lago when he decided to run for Senate the first time, and licked all the boots until he finally got that Trump endorsement. So he's both the worst of the neocon era and the worst of the MAGA era. And I just think that's the worst of all. Because at least you should know who you are. But I promise you, Mike, by the time we are done with you, all of Michigan is going to know who you are. You are a corporate sellout who's not a pharma lobbyist, but really, really might want to be one someday, who voted to raise our prescription drug prices, who supported wars we don't need to fight, who tried to shut down our bridges, who wants to stand in the way of our unions, who should never see the inside of the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, so it was a great night for him. This is still a historic win because he was down like 60 million in spending on ads. APAC spent a ton of money on this race. And, you know, they got a lot of votes for it. They got a lot of value for that spending. Those ad campaigns are deadly, and they were essentially running back-to-back negative El Sayed campaigns and then positive Haley Stevens campaigns, pretty much blanketing the airwaves with that. So the El Sayed method has been grassroots organizing, canvassing, the same things that we've been seeing DSA candidates doing in other places, and it's been working. And this is a swing state, so it's a different type of environment than a place like New York, where that type of canvassing energy might pick up momentum among the population a little bit more easily. We can see that the same thing happened here, and El Sayed even overperformed in certain black precincts, although Haley Stevens, a huge amount of her support was coming from there. But is that type of canvassing going to be enough to beat a Republican, or to essentially now fight off the fact that all that APAC spending is going to happen in the general election as well, and it's going to be a lot more? But the canvassing approach definitely seems to be working for these candidates. Donovan McKinney also won his race against Sri Thanadar, which they kind of went back and forth on the lead. Was looking like Sri Thanadar was going to win for a minute, but then McKinney has come back, so I guess it's only 73% of the votes counted at this point, so I suppose the lead could reverse again, but at this point he is a good 3 points up or so. So that was a pretty good race. That was another one that Hasan Piker was involved in. And it seems like that, you know, attention that he brings to the races, as well as the canvassing, and probably a decent amount of energy that he brings to the canvassing efforts as well, people getting involved because of that, it seems like it's making enough of a difference. Because if those little increments are what is pushing these candidates, then that very well means that Hasan's efforts are needed, and all of our efforts are needed going forward in these races. So, I mean, that's the lesson to take away from this, is that good candidates are winning, and in many cases those candidates are going to be up against Republicans in the general election. So it's time to get serious about organizing for those candidates and being really disciplined about it. So it's good that there are examples of that and avatars of that, even if they're not perfect, and no one's perfect. But at the end of the day, these candidates are gaining support and gaining momentum for a reason, which is that they are the most equipped to speak to people's needs, and as we can see with Zoran Mamdani, they're the most equipped to govern and to actually do the work and to be serious about it. And so that is a real promise that can be offered to people, and the vision is starting to come together. There's going to be some intense obstacles that come. The racism and the communism narratives are going to be intensely powerful going forward. And, you know, that permanence that we saw with the liberal Zionist aspect of the Stevens campaign, where it amounts to this, you know, enormous wave of support sort of out of nowhere. A campaign that was, you know, completely floated became a very formidable opponent. And we're going to see that happen again in typical fashion with Republicans, where they bring out their racist white voters, and it's going to have purchase in other communities as well. So there's a lot of work to be done. Overall, it was a decent night. Cori Bush unfortunately lost her race. She did not do well in her race. So, you know, every effort counts, and every bit of getting involved in these races counts. And I'll do my best to keep you guys informed going forward about what are the best ways to help out.
I'm in the pocket, and they know they can't slow it, can't stop shit. How the game so cold, so toxic. Can't drop cause they're in somebody's pocket. For me, that's not it.